I'm going to be responding to the claim that SAT testing has a negative impact on the education of students, because the three claims that I'll be specifically responding to are that SAT testing is biased to almost all minority groups, that the material in the SAT is limited and exclusive, and that SAT testing poses the risk of students not getting into college. The first claim, that SAT testing is biased to almost all minority groups, is two parts. Because only the economically fortunate can afford to help to prepare for the SAT, and that the SAT favors students from English-speaking homes. The first half of that claim, that the economically fortunate are the only ones that can get help preparing, is wrong, because there's an abundance of free tutoring and practice tests available online. The College Board that puts on the SAT even has free help on their website. The bigger problem with that is that it's irrelevant, because the claim is that it's biased against minority groups, but there's no correlation between someone being part of a minority group and being economically challenged. The second half, that the SAT favors students from English-speaking homes, that is wrong, because according to the census, the most recent census that happened, 80% of people speak English as the primary language at home. So it's not favoring them, it's just that is the common language, or that's the most common language, so that's the one that it makes sense to test in. The second claim is that the material is limited and exclusive because they only test students' skills in math and English, and that the material on the test can be different than what's taught in the classroom. The fact is they test in math and English because those are the two common subjects that everyone has to take. And the point of the test is to find something that you could examine everyone on. In fact, I was looking at, once you, college requirements, the entrance requirements, English and math are the two most, they require the most schooling, to get into college anyway, so you should be able to be tested on those because you should have gotten enough education in those subjects. And furthermore, the placement exams that you have to take once you get into college test you on English and math. So the idea that students should be proficient in those two subjects is not something that's exclusive only to the SAT. And the fact that the material can be different than what is taught in the classroom, that's more or less the point of the test. The material, the way people can teach across the entire country varies a lot. And you need a test that's going to be uniform for everyone to take so you can evaluate everyone fairly. And in fact, two of the articles that the advocate cited in their speech said the same point. The final claim is that the SAT testing imposes a risk of students not getting into college because if you had lower scores on the test, you wouldn't have as good a chance of getting in. The problem with that is that while it is true if you have a lower score, you might have a harder time getting in compared to someone that did better, it ignores the fact that you can take the test multiple times. If you have a lower score, you have the option to retake it and improve your score and then have a better standing when you apply. And that the SAT is not the only thing that influences people when you're applying to a school. There's also your GPA in school, activities and whatnot. And final bit, in the advocate's speech, they mentioned the University of Texas as a school that didn't require the SAT for their applicants. They didn't mention, though, there's actually on, I believe it was, fairtest.org website, they have a list of 850 schools that don't require it, including all the CSUs that we're at right now. And the CSU system specifically, when I looked up their website, it says they don't require the SAT score to be submitted for anyone that has a GPA of 3.0 or over. So if you've done well in school, maybe you just aren't good at taking the tests, you'll still be fine because you can prove that you're still knowledgeable in the subjects. As well, I know from personal experience, transferring into the school, they don't even require the test to be submitted. So if you have trouble getting in, you go to another school, you can kind of do a 4-year university and not have to worry about the test at all. And based on all those points, you can see that the SAT really doesn't have that much of a negative impact on people trying to go to college. Thank you.
All right, structurally everything is relatively easy to follow. On the economic argument, I think you've got some information that is not being cited. In other words, about all the free assistance that's largely asserted. I don't doubt that there's some free assistance, but we ought to get a source citation on that. Your argument that it's not really relevant, that may... I think there's a big assumption that economic status and ethnicity do not have a correlation. My guess would be that if you looked at it, there is a statistical correlation. I think that you kind of let that go a little too easily. On the argument about English bias, your response basically is that, well, 80% speak English, so that's pretty much the answer to it. That doesn't tell us, though, why the test isn't problematic for people who are not native speakers. That means that 20% of the population may, in fact, be discriminated against from the very get-go. And even those people who do speak English, I don't know how many of them are fluent in it. How important is it what those problems are? I think that there are better challenges to make on this argument than the one that you've made, and it just feels a little underwhelming on that particular point. The explanation about why math and English skills are focused on, I think that that's pretty straightforward, and it makes a lot of intuitive sense. There's not any evidence on that point, but it's probably not something that needs a lot of proof. I think almost everybody recognizes that. The idea about the uniform standards, you make a vague reference to the advocate's own evidence on those points. You should go ahead and quote the evidence directly and talk about why that is in fact important, that we need to have that uniform standard, and that the uniform standard is something that the schools use. Let's see. The idea that it's going to be problematic about getting into particular schools, you have basically two responses on this. One says that you can take the test multiple times. And I think that that's probably a good point, but I'm not sure that it... you said, and that it's not the only information that is utilized in making the decision, but I'm not sure that that diminishes the point that, in fact, a bad SAT score may, in fact, diminish your opportunity to get into at least some schools. Now, you did take the example of the advocate on the University of Texas and expand on that, and I thought you did a pretty good job illustrating the number of schools that don't have those kinds of requirements. I'm not sure that they have the same degree of competitiveness that people are worried about here, but that would be something that would have to be defended by the advocate on this point, and I thought you did a pretty solid job on that issue. All right. Thank you.